Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of VR Roundtable. We are now up to episode 104. What is going on? It is Sunday. It is November 18th. I'm, of course, joined by our full panel. We have Steve, Gary, and Chris in the building. What is going on, everybody? Am I going too early?
No, you're good.
Okay. I'm sorry. Music is confusing me there in the background. And oh, you know what? I need to mute myself. That's what the problem is. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, here we are today. It is episode 104, and I'm joined by Steve, Gary, and Chris. We do have a full complement in the building today. Steve, what is going on? I know you've been dealing with some minor OBS issues, some production issues. It seems like the gremlins just won't stop attacking us. When are we going to have some freedom here?
I don't know. So we were told that Skype was changing the way, whether it was supporting the old version or the new version. And so we made these steps to go to the new version, and we just can't get it to work right. And there's a plug-in issue or something. So luckily, I guess they haven't turned off the old version the way they said they were. So we're back on the old way. And for the time being, all is well. So we're not going to try to change until Microsoft absolutely makes us. So that's where we stand. We're live, and until someone says we got problems, I'm going to assume we're good.
All righty. And Gary, how's it going over there in the UK? What's the latest?
Yeah, it's all good over here. Nothing really to report, honestly. It's been a little bit mundane. Because it has been a little bit more mundane this past week, I've played a few things that I haven't played in VR for a while. So things like Skyrim and that kind of stuff. I've gone back into that. I also played a little bit of Project Cars 2, which I know you and Steve discussed last week. So I've gone into that a little bit, and yeah, I think it's fantastic. I'm always up for something a little bit like Project Cars or Assetto Corsa, but as Steve mentioned last week, the friction of getting into Project Cars 2 is pretty good. You know, you've not got all of that kind of stuff to contend with where you have to keep taking the headset off or anything like that.
All righty, and we also have Chris joining us, of course. Chris, looks like you got a new headset there. How's that working out?
Oh yeah, I'm just using my girlfriend's headset today. Long story, but I got audio, which is the good thing. Yeah, I'm doing good. Like, I had MIGS this past week, which for people who don't know, that's like a Montreal International Game Summit. So I met with a couple of VR devs there, and hopefully we can bring some of them on or talk about their games eventually. So it was a neat experience. That was what I've been up to. Just really very busy week.
Okay, sounds cool. All right, well, guys, today on our show today, not a ton of news, but we're going to have some coverage a little bit later on Megalith, the open beta for PlayStation VR. We're going to talk about Spheres, which is a new video cinematic feature that is available on the Oculus Store. And we're going to talk about Crow the Legend, very similar to that, also available on the Oculus Store, a cinematic experience. Maybe get into a few other minor games that we might have touched. But let's go ahead and cover a few minor news stories that we do have on a rather slow news week. And probably the biggest news story that is floating around out there, everybody is talking about this. You go to any forum that is dealing with VR, and you're going to find countless people talking about, did you order your Samsung? I couldn't get it. It was sold out. This, that, and the other. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a Black Friday deal for the Samsung Odyssey Plus. It seems like it was just a couple of weeks ago that this thing released. $499, $500, a brand new product. And then, bam, a couple of weeks later, we get this major discount, $300. And the thing is if you tried to get it last night, you might be kind of bummed out, because apparently about 5 minutes after midnight, the Samsung Odyssey Plus was completely sold out. But I do understand there are a number of ways to still possibly get your hands on this deal or kind of get in line for this deal. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about what is going on with the Samsung Odyssey Plus? I know you're the new owner of an Odyssey Plus. You have the old Odyssey as well. Actually, you can kind of give us a breakdown on the entire thing. Go ahead.
So, I think it's a good deal. Like, I think you covered the news here, right? It's $300 if you can get your hands on one. So you have Samsung themselves. The last report that I saw, which is about an hour before we from right now, about an hour ago was the last time I was looking on what websites to check stock, but you could order one on Microsoft and you could order one on B&H Photo. And what remains to be seen there is what is exactly their stock levels and how soon can you get one if you were to order one. And there's also the benefit of a student discount on the Samsung website if you can get an order to go through. I know that there were some people, I was reading Reddit, there were some people that was up at midnight last night trying to order, and it looks like the orders went through real quickly. So there's a lot of speculation, a lot of angst towards Samsung, thinking that this was a marketing sham that they were doing to try to just, and they sold 10 headsets, before they were sold out. That doesn't appear to be the case now that we actually got to the day and got to a more reasonable hour here on the 18th rather than 12 midnight. So I think you can order one if you're willing to wait. It may not ship tomorrow. You may have to wait a few weeks to get it. But it looks like they may still be out there. That being said, I, as everyone that has been checking us out over the last several weeks, I picked up an Odyssey when it was announced, an Odyssey Plus when it was announced, as soon as you could order it, basically when on the soft launch that they had. And then I kind of was toying with it. Like, I like some things, I dislike some things. I think the fit is pretty poor compared to the Rift. But the anti-SDE is legit. Is what I said, and it does. It significantly reduces the SDE. It's pretty neat in that effect. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a free launch, so that reduced SDE came at a blurrier, a softer image. And I was really going back and forth, like, oh, do I want to keep it? Do I want to keep it? So I said, you know what? The only way I'm going to settle this is if I try an OG Odyssey. So I picked one of those up. I think I talked about it with you last week, Anthony. It was going to arrive after I got off the show with you. So, my take is that I very strongly prefer the OG. Now the OG does come with more SDE, but it's far more crisp, has a much higher resolution than the Vive and the Rift. It's bright and vivid. The colors are much better than the Rift. And I think the fit on the OG is actually better for me. I don't have any of the light bleed on the sides that I was having on the Plus. So with that said, I'm pretty sure I'm sending my Odyssey Plus back. Actually, I'll have to this week if I want to do it. And for those, I also heard, I haven't confirmed myself, but I also heard that those that bought from Microsoft the Odyssey Plus before this $299 deal was announced, that they were doing a price match, which is really the only decent thing to do. If I was planning on keeping my Odyssey Plus, I'd be pretty well ticked off if I was, paid $200 more for it 2 weeks after everyone else, or 2 weeks before everyone else was able to buy it for $299. So nevertheless, mine is going back unless someone can't get one and they want to buy mine before I send it back to Microsoft. And assuming Microsoft does the price match, of course. Hint, hint, wink, wink, Chris. So back to you guys.
Okay, Gary, I know you like to collect headsets on the side. Are you tempted for, Odyssey Plus? I mean, are you thinking about Odyssey Plus, regular Odyssey? Or are you just going to wait this out because we have this Valve mystery HMD that is still hovering in the distance somewhere? What are your thoughts with all of this?
Well, and we were talking about this just before the show starts, Anthony. Everybody talking about Odyssey and Odyssey Plus and this kind of stuff, and it just gets you in the mood for it. You think, do I really need this new headset, or should I wait? And we can go round and round in circles with this. One thing I want to quickly mention is Robert Sterenchak in chat did say that he picked his up. He ordered his for an hour ago on Samsung.com, still for $299. So the things are still out there. I don't know. I suppose that's a pre-order maybe, but I'm not too sure. But yeah, it's a little bit frustrating for me being in the UK. We just can't get hold of these things, although there are ways, you can get somebody to purchase it over in the US and then ship it over to you. And also on the B&H Photo website, they do international shipping as well. So anybody that wants to pre-order it from that website, they can do that over here in Europe or the UK. Obviously, you'll be paying excess on top of it in terms of shipping, and also probably customs import duties and things like that on top of that. But yeah, overall, I've got to say, I am tempted by the Samsung Odyssey or the Odyssey Plus, based on what Steve has told me and what he mentioned on the show where he was speaking about the Odyssey Plus, I actually think the original Odyssey is probably the way for me to go, based more on the fact that I'm one of these people that prefers the slightly sharper, slightly more aliased image than the softer, over aliased image, in terms of when I've been playing games that give you the option to try both. So I'm just thinking maybe that the softer image on the Plus isn't quite for me, and if I was to go for one, it would probably be the original Odyssey. But I'd love to try both of these back to back and give a more comprehensive opinion of it.
It'll get it's very, because there isn't one headset that just one headset to rule them all. And I haven't tried a Pimax or Star VR. Maybe there is, but you try one, and I have been A/Bing these two headsets for the last week, and it's oh, okay, yeah, that's great. And then I'll go over here, but no, that part's better. And it's a constant compromise. And the same thing applies with the Rift. There's things when I did go back to the Rift and tried something out, oh, this part is better in the Rift. And with all of this, it's very subjective. So and the only way to really know is to try them all and to have them all in your home. And I don't really recommend you do it, because it's just a waste of money. You really only need one PC VR headset. If you're the craziest of the craziest fan and you want more than one, or you just want to collect headsets, that's cool, but you don't really need it. So ignorance can be bliss. And that's the problem with trying multiple headsets, is then you'll be oh, well, I wish I would have kept the Odyssey Plus, because I'm really seeing screen door in this game or in this experience. And it's I don't know. I almost recommend not opening the can of worms, Gary, because then you go down that road and you can't really take it back. But at the same time, there's certain experiences, like Elite Dangerous, where both the Odyssey and the Odyssey Plus look notably better than the Rift. And then from comparing between the two, it's really subjective. I am preferring the OG Odyssey, and we've had a few people in comments saying, "Oh, that's surprising, Steve. That's surprising." And it's just my preference. Another person sitting right next to me might prefer the Odyssey Plus. So it is really, it's like tasting wine or tasting music. It's going to vary from person to person, and neither's really right or wrong. It's not an objective improvement between the two, like it is, compared to the Rift in terms of resolution.
Don't you guys wish you had a best friend that lived a few blocks down the street, and he had every headset there was, and you could go over there and you could try them all out at your leisure?
Wish
Chris,
Steve was my neighbor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. What's your thoughts on Samsung Odyssey?
Oh man, it was really tempting, especially with the student discount, because the student discount I was advertised as $255, but it doesn't actually exist anymore. They got rid of that, which is sad. So once again, I'm like a fence sitter on this stuff, because we don't really, like you all said, we don't really need another PC VR headset. I think if it was a Rift S, I'd be instantly buying it, like I've been saying for so long. But it's such a hard thing, just because I want that increased resolution. But I think I'm like all you guys. I want a sharper image, and I want the fit to be better, So it sounds like the Odyssey Plus for me is kind of a downgrade, and it made this market where there's a bunch of Samsung Odysseys on eBay for ridiculously high price points. You'd think they'd be maybe even lower than the Odyssey Plus, but I think just because some people still prefer the original Odyssey, now you have this weird market where there's just people upselling those on eBay, and you can't really get those for a decent price either. So I don't know. It's a good deal if someone wants to get into VR. I think this is your first VR headset, and you can easily travel because it's Windows MR. You don't have to set up your sensors everywhere. That's probably the biggest reason I would want one, just because I do travel sometimes, and it'd be good to easily just set it up wherever I go. But yeah, it looks like if you get one now, it'll ship the week of November 25th, so a few weeks out, but that's not too bad. So if anyone is looking to get into PC VR, I think that's a pretty good headset.
Yeah, I really like the fact that so many people are jumping on this and buying it, and there is this frenzy over this Samsung Odyssey, because it seems like it'll be just perfect if 3 weeks from now, boom, major Valve announcement, here's the headset, and everybody just bought an Odyssey 3 weeks earlier. That's the way things work, right? But another thought I have on the Odyssey, this kind of goes back to my days of being a retro gamer. And one of the things I was always into as a retro gamer, I would play my old retro gaming systems on an RGB monitor with an RGB cable, and it would and one of the things about that is it would show everything. It would show every blemish, every flaw, but then everything that was beautiful, it would show that crystal clear as well. And I remember people would come over and they would try it and they would like, yeah, this looks really clear, but man, I'm seeing, like if we're playing a PlayStation game or something, they're like, look, you can see the seams, you can see, you can basically see the man behind the curtain, so to speak. But for me, I liked that because that was Christmas, that was detailed, that it was dialed in. And I could live with the flaws where other people would rather play it in S video and have it kind of smoothed out a little bit. They don't see the seams. And that it's kind of a similar analogy to that. Like, do you like things crystal clear and sharp, like Paradise Decay likes that, where other people, they don't want the distracting SDE and the aliasing and all of that?
Yeah, it's a really good comparison, Anthony, actually, because I've never thought of that analogy between the two. But you're right. A lot of purists will say you've got to play these things on a CRT. I mean, an RGB CRT is really the best way to play these old retro games that people that are into retro gaming. That's the kind of thing. That's the sort of the dream, really. But at the same time, I'm a little bit like you. I don't mind playing it like on a modern day LCD display and just seeing all of the crispness of the pixels and that kind of stuff. I actually quite like that, as weird as it sounds, and a lot of purist retro gamers won't like that. And that's sort of a good analogy to how I feel about VR in terms of it being slightly sharper. And I will always turn anti-aliasing off if I get the option. I remember going back to Fallout 4 when that game first came out, and you had a few aliasing options, but the aliasing in Fallout 4 was really pretty poor, I felt. So I would turn it all the way down and just have a really, really sharp image with this aliasing. And it wasn't perfect, it wasn't perfect by any means. It was sort of more noticeable in certain scenes with a lot of trees and branches and that kind of stuff. It didn't really work too well in those, but for the most part, I preferred that. And going back to what Steve was saying earlier, I think it is purely a subjective preference on which you prefer. There's no right or wrong on this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And like museums and things like that, like they love the Samsung Odyssey. Like I've been around in Montreal and there's like a bunch of just VR exhibits there. It's really weird, honestly. Like I'm not used to that. Being from the States where we don't really have that. We just have some VR arcades here and there. But like the Odyssey Plus is, I think, perfect for people who aren't into VR and they just want to experience VR for the first time in some like museum or something. Like I'm sure museums and exhibits are like buying these things up because like that's a really good price for that stuff. But like I feel like that's more what it's designed for, like easy in and out. Like it's not perfect, but it's and then they're also selling it in the consumer market. So like that's what I think the industry sees it as more of. Like the Odyssey Plus is just that thing that's really easy to set up for people who don't know how to set up VR. So it's good for museums, stuff like that. But
there's also the case, like I know we're going to be talking about a couple of these later on in our show, the cinematic experiences. It's one thing if you're in a game. In a game, you probably want the fine detail in a game. You want to see the readouts. You want everything, even though you get some of the negative with it, you want that fine detail. Where if you're in a cinematic experience like the Bond, you maybe you're okay with a little more softness because you're just in there and you're just absorbing the experience. You're not necessarily looking at that tree in the background and really focusing in on the tree. So then you get into the question, well, do we have two different headsets for two different kinds of experiences? And that's kind of a luxury. And Steve was kind of talking about that, having the luxury of having multiple headsets for different ways of playing. Yep. But we can go ahead and move on to our next story now. And the next big story that we have is Oculus is no more. Well, I'm talking about Oculus LLC, basically the initial entity that started up Oculus LLC is no more. Now, this, of course, is just kind of a legal technicality. So Facebook Technologies itself now has Oculus under their umbrella, and we don't have Oculus LLC. Kind of much ado about nothing here, but at the same time, it does kind of seem like we're starting to move towards maybe a future where we're looking at Facebook VR. Maybe we won't hear the name Oculus anymore. I don't know. It sounds kind of like a crazy thought. Steve, what's your take on the name change here? Is this really much ado about nothing, or could this be signaling a trend towards maybe moving away from the Oculus brand?
Well, that's exactly what I think, and that's why I put this story down here for us. Is this one step is much ado about nothing. It itself doesn't matter, but if you've ever heard the phrase "death by paper cut," and I think that's what we've been seeing over the last month or so with Facebook and Oculus, is that these little steps are happening here and here and here and here, and I think they're all adding up to a branding thing. Like, I don't think Facebook is going to get rid of the Oculus surname in such a way, but what I think is going to start happening, well, it's not really even what I think, it's what is happening. We're seeing it, as we're going to see an ever more prevalent tone of Facebook, stronger and stronger and stronger, with the marketing and with the products and all of that. And, to me, that is, I'm not of the mind. You talk to a lot of people, they're just against a headset purely because it's Facebook and that's it. Like, it's just Facebook. I'm not dealing with it. I hate Facebook. I don't necessarily hold that view, but I do, analyze and understand that a lot of people have that perspective. So I'll be very curious to sit back and watch to see if they have stronger associations between Oculus and Facebook, and people draw that parallel. They right now you'll see someone refer to the Rift. They'll refer to it as the Oculus. I know we've all seen someone type that out or say that. And I just wonder if at some point someone's going to say the Facebook VR thing, and it makes me wonder about the branding and everything as a whole, and what comes with the negative ties to the Facebook name, positive and negative. They have tons of money. I don't think they're necessarily evil, horrible people. But at the same time, there is some questionable stuff. So I guess I'm sort of rambling here about it, but the big takeaway for me is this stronger tie to Facebook in terms of imagery and public facing awareness, while seemingly kind of cutting down on the Oculus awareness.
Gary, I'm going to send it over to you, but I want to ask you this in a specific way. Okay, so we are the enthusiasts. We're also part of internet culture. We're these people that we're always online. We're always doing involved with tech stuff. We're on Reddit. We're doing all this stuff. But let's talk about the soccer moms. Let's talk about Joe Walmart and some of these people out there. Do you imagine if they went to Best Buy and they see a box that says "Buy Facebook VR"? Would that hold more credence to them than Oculus? Or do you think the Facebook stuff that has gone on in the news with all the political stuff that's gone on, has it even soured Facebook among like soccer moms and average Joe Blows out there?
I think there's definitely been some kind of sour against from Facebook over the past few months and things like that. But it's an interesting point you bring up there, Anthony, because if you go into a retailer and you see these Oculus Go boxes, for example, you as somebody just passing by, we're enthusiasts. We see this slow, gradual change where they're moving from Oculus VR to Facebook VR. There probably is that change that's going on. I think we can all agree on that, but slowly. But if you are just somebody that's not an enthusiast and you go into a retailer, you see this box, this Oculus Go headset, and then you see the Facebook logo, which is still relatively small at the moment, in the corner of this headset. You think, okay, so it's got a Facebook app on this Oculus headset. A lot of people will have no idea that Oculus is actually owned by Facebook. And I think that's the point to take away at the moment. And slowly they've got to change that perception. I think there will be a point where the baggage that Facebook have at the moment will probably, it'll either get worse or people will just slowly forget about it and go back to thinking, Facebook's fine and we can trust them as this being the VR headset that we choose. It could go either way, honestly. I'm not too sure. And I think it's difficult to say which way would be the correct way for them to go at the moment. I sort of agree with Steve in terms that I don't think the name Oculus is going to go anywhere. Whether Facebook, this slow amalgamation of Oculus within Facebook is its entirety, I don't think the name Oculus is going to go anywhere. I think we're going to see the name Oculus for quite a while, actually, even if eventually, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, it does eventually go to Facebook VR.
Chris, you are the resident fanboy in the house. You've obviously been following Oculus for a long time with the Kickstarter and everything, and you have this like knowledge of this Oculus name. How sad would you be if the Oculus name were to go away and it just be Facebook VR, or do you not think that's a very big deal?
That would be so sad. I'd be devastated, but I don't think that's what's gonna happen. It's a really weird place Facebook is in, because they're like we were saying, they're known for being a software company and not hardware. So you have Facebook, they have the app Facebook, and then you have like WhatsApp and Instagram, which are like actually separate companies that are connected to Facebook, but they're not in like that whole they're not like in the Facebook brand really. And then you have Oculus and Portal, which are the two hardware things for Facebook. Portal's some really weird like Facebook like smart home device or something. I don't even know. But then you have Oculus. So I think Facebook has kind of two things they need to do. They need to show that Facebook is bigger than Facebook the app. Like Facebook the company is different. And then once they can do that, then eventually they can start phasing it more towards just like Facebook VR and things like that. But right now, if there's a device that just said Facebook VR, we just think, oh, it's just a VR app for the Facebook app. Like, it's a really hard thing. Maybe they need a new company name, like, and then Facebook is a product, but then they have some like overall arching name or something. It's like a really weird place for them to be in. But like, you can see the timeline, and Upload VR has the timeline right now. Like mid 2016, Oculus from Facebook branding started to be introduced, and everyone was like, oh no. And then, late 2016, the CEO from Oculus was removed. And then like they kind of made it into a Facebook person. And then it just kept going from there. And I think eventually we'll get. For now, Facebook has a problem with soccer moms and everything, where they just think it's software. So we'll get there in 5 years.
Yeah, I think you were mentioning the other companies. So within the total Facebook umbrella, you have Instagram, WhatsApp, and then Facebook Technologies. Those three are at the same level. So even though Facebook Technologies has Facebook in the name, it's a layer under just Facebook as a whole. And then within Facebook Technologies is Oculus and this other subsidiary, I guess, Portal. I don't know anything about them. And also kind of worth mentioning, as it's showing on screen right now, that over the last relative short period of time, the former CEO of Instagram has departed. The former co-founder of WhatsApp, that CEO has departed. So it seems par for the course in these companies that they're gobbling up, that the former CEOs do eventually leave, and or the founders. So it almost seems like they get their big payout, and why do they really need to stay on at these companies? Like, if I was a Reeb or if I was Palmer, like, give me my millions and deuces. Like I'm not going to work. So some of it may just be people. Like, why would they go to work if you're sitting on a stack of cash like that? So that's just how I feel about it. Would either of you keep working if you had a $2 billion, or I guess Palmer didn't get that much, but if you got $500 million, like, why work, right?
Yeah, you'd probably do your own little special project that you've always been wanting to do or something, Okay, well, let's move on to the next story. Next story we have is Microsoft has acquired InXile Entertainment, which of course is the developer of The Mage's Tale. And so this was kind of an interesting acquisition, because we were wondering, well, what does this do to the VR things that are already in development? Like, we know InXile is bringing The Mage's Tale to PlayStation VR, and apparently nothing has changed as far as that goes. The other question is, does this signal anything that is Microsoft eventually going to head towards VR? And also InXile, I believe, is working on like a massively multiplayer MMO that kind of features VR as well. Anybody else want to jump in here, knows a little bit more about this one? This is pretty much all I know from the headlines.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it, honestly, but I did see that I didn't realize it was a MMO. I thought it was just a standard RPG, like a single player RPG that they were working on. But I don't know the ins and outs of it. I think it's an interesting it's interesting that Microsoft have purchased them, and they have said that this RPG or MMO that they're working on in the background is still going. They are still working on that, so that's encouraging at least. Whether Microsoft are ready to jump into VR yet, we still don't know. We've been talking about this for God knows how long, 2 years, something like that. When will Microsoft finally jump into VR? And it could be. At least you could understand them thinking, well, they're a developer that would create any games for us anyway. And if they've also got this experience within VR with a title, Mage's Tale, which has been relatively well received, then it can't do any harm to keep them on the back burner if we do want to venture forth with VR. I think, honestly, we've spoken about this numerous times, but I think there's got to be a part of Microsoft thinking we have to get into VR at some point. It's just when. I think that's really the only question. They are going to get into VR. It's just when.
Yeah. I think I don't think that they're necessarily going to do. Microsoft's going to do anything with VR because they bought InXile. I don't know too much about what InXile, the game that they're currently working on, but I do know that the Mage's Tale was one of my favorite games last year. It was one of the first games that had really significant sort of AAA-ish chops to it. It felt really polished. It felt really well put together, whether or not you like that particular game style or not. And I'm excited for anything that they do in VR. They've earned an element of my trust based on how well I think Mage's Tale was. So I look forward to what they put out. And let's keep in mind that just because Microsoft is doing this, Microsoft bought Ninja Theory as well. And Ninja Theory still continued to do their thing. They still brought the Senua's Sacrifice, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, and released the VR patch for it for free on Steam and everything. So, and the game still came out on PlayStation. So I don't think that just because Microsoft bought it that they're necessarily going to somehow limited from competing platforms or that it means that they are going to step into a new platform. They, as a whole, Microsoft, ignoring VR, Microsoft needs to bolster their first party and their in-house devs. Like they're really short stacked compared to Sony in this regard. So this could really just be Microsoft building up to try to get some decent developers under their thumb for the next Xbox to better go head to head with the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, and Microsoft, they bought out Mojang, which makes Minecraft, and it's a perfect example of how they're really just trying to make things better, and they're not trying to make exclusives. Like Minecraft's still open on everything. In fact, when they bought it, they're like, we need to make it so everyone can play together, add crossplay and stuff like that. So I think Microsoft's a really good person to buy a company. They really let it stay true to its roots and true to its development, because basically all the developers of Minecraft are still working on Minecraft. So they must like it, which is good. It's unlike Facebook where the CEO leaves and all this stuff. So that would have been interesting if Microsoft bought Oculus. But anyway,
they could have held out on buying Skype. We've saved me some headache here these last 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Well, do you guys remember when EA would buy up every company and totally ruin the companies like Westwood Studios and everybody?
Microsoft have a bit of a reputation lately of closing down studios as well. So this isn't completely encouraging, but the way they've got to aim for with the next generation, where they're going, I think there's got to be a point where they're just acquiring to keep these developers. One thing I wanted to mention as well, we were just talking about the Oculus, sort of Brendan Arieb leaving Oculus and stuff like that, and all these leaks that came out. And the only way I was thinking about this, and this is a bit of a tangent slightly, I just wanted to hear people's thoughts on it. But what if the leak was Brendan Arieb? He leaked all this information about the Rift 2 and that kind of stuff, because the only way that somebody could know all of that information that they were giving away, it's got to be somebody pretty high up in Oculus. Maybe it was Brendan Arieb. Maybe that's the key to all of this.
If I have to assume he had some pretty significant legal shackles around his wrist. That if he did, I mean, cojones, sure, great, it's possible. I don't disagree with you, but he'd be putting a lot out in risk, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. DLG27 in chat says, I'm excited for Mage's Tale coming to PSVR, and you might be one of the few, because I'm on the PSVR subreddit quite often, and I'm always amazed. We have some really good games that have been on PC VR, and then they come over to PlayStation VR, and a lot of people in PlayStation VR land have never heard of them, don't know anything about them, and sometimes these games come over with almost no hype whatsoever. For example, In Death is coming to PlayStation VR on November 27th, which is not too far away, and hardly anybody is talking about that. So I really hope a quality game like The Mage's Tale doesn't, hit PlayStation VR with a thud and nobody recognizes it.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the
quick. Okay. I'm gonna jump in here. Like, everyone on the stream is probably noticing this new info bar up here at the top. I just kind of want to mention it's something new that I put together this week. I actually borrowed the idea from MRTV, so thanks, Sebastian. What you have up there, I know those of you watching it have been dying. It's been one of your dreams to have your name on a VR Roundtable episode. So if you're the 50-ish% that are watching this that haven't subscribed, if you subscribe, your name will show up there and replace our last subscriber, which is Darren Jarvis here. And also, if you want to super chat us, your name will be permanently. We got our top super chats over the last 30 days and our super chat total. So go ahead and get your name embellished in the Hall of Fame here and help out our channel.
Alrighty, and the next news story we have is Oculus has launched a referral program where you can get some free store credit if you refer a friend to purchase an Oculus Rift or an Oculus Go. Now, I remember this, but I didn't look into it too much. Does anybody have a little bit more information on this one?
Yeah, I don't get why this is news this week, to be honest. Like, I saw this like a month ago and I was already ready. I'm like, if anyone's going to buy a Rift, use my referral code. I think it gives... So you get 30% or $30 in store credit. So I would get $30 and then someone would get like $20 off a Rift, I think, something like that. It's not like a big cost savings. And like if there's a Black Friday deal, it will trump this any day. But I think it's cool for those off seasons where, friends can start bulking up and being like, hey, if you buy a Rift from me, I'll get $30. I'll buy a game, then you can buy a game and refer someone. It's a good program. I think Oculus should kind of extend it a little bit more in terms of like how much money each person gets. If each person gets store credit, that'd be a lot better. Then I could be like, okay, you buy a Rift, we'll both buy this game, and then we can play VR together, which would be cool. But it's a good program. More companies should do this. Like, I've been in referral programs for all this other stuff, like my self-driving company and like electric skateboarding. So I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just on the wider view of Oculus trying all of these different things to get people, entice people to purchase these. So all of these market strategies that they're doing at the moment, I think it just speaks to trying to get more people to try VR in the first place. And that's really what this referral program is aiming towards, I think. And it's interesting that they're trying all of these strategies, and I hope they continue to do it. Yeah, I think it's good either way.
Yeah, I've been eating away at my roommate to get a Rift, and I found one on eBay the other day for like $230, and he got it. So we got another Rift in the family, which is good. I've convinced like 3 people this year to get Rifts and like 2 to get Goes. It's great.
Just going back to chat, there's a number of people in chat that are talking about Microsoft and Xbox and VR. And a number of them are saying, well, they could just flip a switch and Windows mixed reality, like Paint Pros Colorado says Xbox runs on Windows. So just plug and play Windows mixed reality. They just need to flip the switch. And I just wanted to comment to that real quick. One of the things that we have to understand here is if you're the platform holder, if you're Microsoft and you're running the Xbox show, yeah, you can flip a switch. But there's also support. There's everything that goes into the back end. And Xbox is very much a mainstream product that's in the living room. Sally the soccer mom and Joe Walmart, that's their core audience for Xbox. And so if you add a VR headset to the Xbox and you just flip a switch, there's all the support, and then you're also going to have all your fans yelling and screaming, "Hey, Microsoft, where's all the special VR games?" So I just don't think it's that simple. And I think what we're going to be looking at in terms of Microsoft eventually getting into VR on the Xbox platform is when we make another console transition, and we, of course, had all those rumors about PlayStation 5 and all of that, but when we start making this new console transition and we go to PS5 and whatever the next Xbox is, I think that's the next opportunity to jump in with VR. But anybody on the roundtable want to comment to this at all?
Well, just very quickly, I think you're right, Anthony. I think the support is one thing, but also Phil Spencer has mentioned numerous times that he wants VR to get to a point where it's wireless. You know, they've not got all of these hassles of wires. Also, I think, you know, Windows Mixed Reality, it does have inside-out tracking, so I think that's also going to be a must for them. They want to make the friction of VR much lower than it currently is. And while I sort of admire Sony for what they've done in pushing VR in its early stages, I can't argue with the fact that I think it's not necessarily a mistake of Microsoft to wait a little bit longer and do it where the hardware can support what the users' expectations of what console VR possibly should be. So, you know, I don't know if there's a right or wrong with this question either, but it's interesting to see Sony and Microsoft take these two quite different strategies with VR either way.
Steve, have you ever thought or considered, like, when are we going to get the next reference design? Do you think there's going to be a Windows Mixed Reality 2.0? Or do you think Microsoft is going to save that for Xbox and then maybe drop it for Xbox and then also bring it to PC as Windows Mixed Reality 2.0? Because we've got all these people buying Samsung Odyssey Pluses, but it's basically that original Windows Mixed Reality technology. You got to imagine their second version is going to have vastly improved inside-out tracking with all the experience they've gained.
Yeah, maybe. Like, of course, they're going to continue to improve upon it, and we've always said, like, the going back a while back, you and I disagreed on whether or not the next when Microsoft got into VR on Xbox, whether it would be the Windows MR platform, and you always thought they would just push the button and launch WMR on Xbox, and I always said they wouldn't. So just in general, like, I look forward to seeing how, not necessarily our beef on it, like it would be cool to talk about it in that sense, but I'll be legitimately curious, because there's nothing technically limiting them from being able to do that on Xbox. You know, I'm sure they could figure it out if that's the direction they want to go. But yeah, I kind of am not very hot on Microsoft on Xbox and VR at this point. Like, I think they're just waiting in the shadows.
All righty, let's go ahead and move on to our next story. And YouTube VR has now made it to the Oculus Go. And this is something a lot of us Oculus Go owners have been waiting for this for quite some time, wondering, you know, why is this taking so long? But now we finally got it. I tried it out myself this week. I was really impressed. It works very well. You can try 180 videos, 360 videos. You could just watch regular, normal YouTube stuff. The optics on the Go is very good. So it's a great platform to have it there. Chris, I'm sure you've probably tried this out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to do it, but thank goodness this came out. Like, this is something I've been looking forward to forever. And like, I told all my friends, I'm like, guys, YouTube VR is finally out on our Go's. Like, the browser version was decent enough, but my biggest problem with it was I couldn't watch VR 180 videos in my Oculus Go, which was so frustrating, because VR 180 is the standard by Google where it's two lenses front facing and there's depth in that. And I have a VR 180 camera I could talk about in the future or something like that. But there was really no good way to view this content on the go, because if you uploaded it to YouTube and looked at it in the browser, you would just see a 2D image, because YouTube like converts it to 2D for desktop, and it didn't know that you were watching on an Oculus Go. So now finally I'll be able to watch like all these VR videos that I've wanted to, and upload my own VR videos and actually be able to watch them in the Oculus Go, which is amazing. So I think, thank goodness this came out. This was long overdue, and this will help sell a lot more Go's, I'd say.
Just on a quick sideline, Chris, I don't know if you wanted to quickly talk about your experience with the, is it the Lenovo camera, the 180 camera? Yeah, because I'm actually very interested in this. I know because it's sort of one of the ones that's the most reasonably priced. I know the specs are not necessarily the highest or anything like that, and it's got problems when you transfer in video to the computer and stuff like that to get it rendered onto YouTube, possibly. But I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Like I've been using it for a project for my final for a few classes. So what I've been doing is we've been electric skateboarding, and I put it on like a three-axis stabilized gimbal, and then I have the little VR 180 camera out on the end, and we've been just skateboarding throughout Montreal, which has been really cool. I'm really sad because it defaults to 1440p, not 4K, and I didn't realize that until now. So like all my footage I've been taking is a little bit more low res than I would have liked, but it's really something that I think, especially I think it went on sale or is going on sale for Black Friday to be $200 US, which I think for that price a lot more people should consider buying it, just for the fact that you can capture a memory and you can capture the depth of a memory and view it back whenever you want to, which is really neat. There's a lot of limitations, like looking up and down depth is correct, but when you think about it, if you're looking left or right and the eyes are staying like this, or like right in front of you, then there'll be some kind of artifacts and warping in terms of depth. But if you put things right in the middle of your field of view, like it looks very realistic in that, especially in that close, like intimate range that we have in VR, like the 3 to 6 feet range where you can really see depth. So I think maybe it wasn't too worth it for the $399, but being 200, like that kind of brings it to more accessible market. And like I would just want this if I'm going on a vacation with my family or with friends, and just it's really easy. You just turn on, you take a picture, or you can switch it to video mode. It's the ease of use on it is excellent. So I haven't really gotten into editing the content or anything. I've just been looking at the raw videos in my Rift and my Go, through uploading it through Dropbox, and then like doing all this stupid stuff because YouTube VR didn't exist, but now it does. So I think that honestly kind of seals the deal that YouTube VR is out on Go. Now you can just upload your footage and share it with your friends. Even if it was just an unlisted link or something, they can actually watch it in VR without hassle, which there was a lot of hassle to get that footage on a headset that was usable. So that's kind of, I guess, my first-ish impressions on it. I've been using it for a few weeks now, but I think if anyone's interested in documenting VR, it's so much better than VR 180 or 360. If you just get a 360 camera, there's zero depth. That looks like crap compared to this. So this is the right way to go for the foreseeable future. But I'll share more thoughts in weeks to come.
Yeah, that'd be good, because I'm actually really intrigued by it, because we speak about on this show so often about how we're not really that impressed with 360 video or even necessarily 180 video, just due to just the low resolution and this kind of stuff. And yet at the same time, I'm intrigued enough in a product that is low cost, and ease of use is a big factor for me as well, with this kind of stuff, where I could just pick this thing up for, like say, if it's on offer for $200, and sort of capture some kind of images where if I'm away on holiday or something like that, then that's good enough for me at this stage. I know it's not going to be earth shattering or blow me away or anything like that, but I am intrigued enough. I think the editing, from what I've heard, the editing of the videos is the part that's not quite there yet. There's complications with that, but maybe not. I don't know enough about it, but I am intrigued, and I've been looking at picking one of these things up. I don't know if I'll actually take the plunge.
You should. It's definitely like VR 360 is a completely different ballgame in terms of editing, because you have to figure all this stuff out. VR 180 is a really cool medium, and I think like a lot of people can jump on this, and it's easy enough that you can place text just in like a regular video editor. It gets exported as a regular 16:9 video, and just on YouTube you kind of add that that VR tag to it, and it'll just work, I think, at least. So that makes it a lot less friction than like a 360 video. Plus, it just looks so much better. Like I could never recommend a 360 camera again. They're not designed for VR. They're designed for desktop to like drag it around. This is actually like a VR camera.
Chris, question for you is it a lot of hassle to get the video prepared and to go through those steps between recording something and then being able to watch it back? But before you answer, a big thanks to Jason Walker, Micah Dunning, and Codswallop for the super chats. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, everyone who's been donating or super chatting, I should say. But yeah, I think editing is probably a lot harder. But in terms of just the ability of like filming a clip and watching it in the Oculus Go, it's not too bad, especially if you have Dropbox paired. So what I do is I have the app on my phone that it's really actually pretty quick to Wi-Fi direct transfer the footage off of the camera to your phone. And then from there, I just upload that specific clip to Dropbox and have my Dropbox linked up with the Go. So then I literally just go in my Go to Dropbox and play the clip, and it works like that. So if you're not editing and you just want to use it kind of as like, the raw clips, yeah, it's pretty easy to do that, and I like that a lot. And it also, you can just transfer it to your computer with the USB-C cable, and it's very fast. It has a bunch of built-in storage. Like I haven't even used my SD card on it, which is crazy. Like I only use like 2%. But the battery lasts like a decently long time. Like I've been using it for maybe an hour straight, and I still had like 75% or something, which is crazy. And there's a lot of storage, so it's really good. I've wanted to wait for the Yi Horizon 5K, I think it's called, or something. There's like a little bit higher resolution of VR 180 camera, but it got announced and then there's like been no information on it. So this seems to be literally the only camera that you can do this with. So especially for the 200, if it's on 200, sale for 200, like I'd pick one up.
Cool.
Alrighty, so the next big story that we have is coming up on December 6th. We have the Game Awards 2018, hosted by Jeff Keighley. And, this is something that's been going on for a number of years, and it's more of it's more of an excuse to have like new game trailers and stuff and bring people on stage and kind of promote some things that are coming up, while at the same time throwing a little bit of love towards the best games that we've seen over the years. And we have the nominations for Best VR Game. And I'll go ahead and read off the nominees. So we have Astrobot Rescue Mission, Firewall 0 Hour, Beat Saber, Moss, and Tetris Effect. Yes, you heard me correct. Tetris Effect. It's been available for maybe 2 weeks, has virtually no VR support that I could really see, but it's nominated anyway. But let's go ahead and bounce over to Steve. Steve, what are your thoughts on some of these nominations?
I'm good with all of them except Tetris Effect. Like Tetris Effect may be a great game. It's just a great game in general. You might be a huge Tetris fan. I'm trying not to poo-poo all over the game itself. But when I think of something, since VR is its own category, where we're looking at something that's specifically VR-esque, it's got to be VR in its blood and soul for these few titles. It bothers me that Tetris Effect, because it's the least VR game that I've of any sort of notable release that I've played all year. Yes, it's in VR. Yes, I can put it and view it through my PlayStation VR, and yes, there is some 3D stereoscopy to it. But other than that, it is really not very VR at all. So for it to even sit in this category when there's all sorts of games that I would put in here above this, that, and then also the comment that I have is this looks like it's all PlayStation. Like, there is no PC VR love here on this. Where's Windlands 2? There are a lot of games that should be on here. All I'll say is I'm not voting. I don't even know how to vote. I'm not going to register. I'm not going to even waste time voting on this thing. But I do hope that Astrobot wins of this lot. Although Beat Saber, I could argue, may be the more accessible VR game. It might be the one that may tip them on the scales more than Astrobot. But for me, of the list, I think Astrobot would be my choice.
Don't you think though that like the timing, like the Tetris Effect thing, I mean, let's just forget about the fact that Tetris Effect doesn't have a ton of VR going on with it. It just barely came out. I mean, how can you, like, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of this at all.
let's just look at it though, because like Steve was saying, this is something I wanted to get into as well. This is basically PSVR Game of the Year awards. It's not really VR Game of the Year, because these are all games that are coming out on PlayStation VR. Beat Saber is the only one. It is the only one that's a PC game at the moment. But we all know it's coming out on PlayStation, and yet they've still added it onto this list. If you take that into account, really, they are focusing on PSVR with this. You know, Steve mentioned like they're not focusing on PC at all. You've got Brass Tactics, you've got all these other fantastic games. In Death, you know, even In Death, which I've not got into. I know a lot of people love. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, the Game of the Year awards show anyway, I think, is an excuse, as you mentioned, Anthony, to have all of these trailers and to do all of that kind of stuff. This award in general, I mean, it's bollocks, isn't it? I mean, it's bollocks. It doesn't do a lot for me.
Don't filter yourself, Gary.
But I agree. I don't think, to me, Tetris Effect is the only one that I wouldn't like on this list. Everybody knows, and I'm not going to bang on about it because I'm not a fan of Beat Saber, but every time I mention it, I'm sort of becoming a parody of myself now every time I mention Beat Saber. So I think it does belong on a Game of the Year awards list. Of course it does. Tetris Effect doesn't for me. One thing I want to quickly mention before I pass it on to other people is the and actually, sorry, yeah, Paradise Decay did mention Moss is on PC as well. That's true, but I think we could still argue it's still basically PlayStation VR awards. Tetris Effect, I just wanted to quickly get onto this because this has been receiving so much acclaim from mainstream games media over the past few weeks, really. It's sort of ridiculous. I mean, everybody loves this game except seemingly, I mean, even some other VR podcasts seem to quite like it. But seemingly we're sort of in a minority to a certain extent with Tetris Effect, because a lot of mainstream games media, they talk about it just as a game anyway on flat screen gaming as being incredible. And they also even go into it to a point where they have tried it in VR and say it's even more incredible. A lot of the time, they will say that they've tried it in VR and really, really enjoyed it. I don't understand this at all, and I think it comes down to a lot of it. The reason I get frustrated by it is I think the music, you could argue the music is good in Tetris Effect, but you can't say it categorically. You can't say categorically the music is great and the visuals are great. Music is so subjective that I think if the music doesn't click with you and the visuals don't necessarily click with you, what are you paying $40 for? What are you paying $40 for if that's the case? And I think there's this blanket statement that goes along mainstream games media of the music is incredible, the visuals are incredible, so you've got to love this game. And I don't necessarily agree with that.
Well, I mean, the same thing, Beat Saber, you know, that you may not click with that music either. And to be fair, like that is subjective. I would just say that Beat Saber, though, is inherently VR. Like you're swinging something, like the stereoscopy is more there. Like, yeah, I think we need to brace ourselves. We need to brace ourselves for Tetris Effect to win this thing, right? Like,
it's gonna be hilarious.
And I think we should do a whole segment if it does, like just to kind of counterbalance the horseshit that it is. Like, I mean, it's what it is. It's just somebody shaking hands behind the scenes. It is cronyism, nepotism. I don't know what you want to call it. Like, it just does not belong on this list.
We'll think do a Beat parody Saber's episode. Gonna win, but that's me. But if you guys, so we're gonna have our own VR Game Awards. It's gonna come up. Usually we do it a little bit later. We try to let most of the big stuff get out before we do our awards. And of course, Half-Life VR coming out any week now, so we got to give it a couple weeks to come out, right?
We do know we're going to do it on the 16th.
Okay.
Yep. So the 16th, if you're interested in real VR of the Year awards, tune in here because we will do a much, much better job than these people.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that pretty much covers it for all the news that we had today. And I don't know how we spent that long on the news, but we always find a way to do it. But let's go ahead and get into some game discussion. And this week, some VR experience discussion as well. And you know what? We do have a couple of experiences to get into. So why don't we start with one of those first? And let's go ahead and start with Spheres, which is available on the Oculus Store. Now, this is going for $10. It is not free. A lot of VR experiences are free, but this is considered a bit of a more higher end kind of experience. In fact, you might remember this is in the news from a while back. This is one of, I believe, the very first VR type production that has been purchased by an outside company in a seven-figure deal. I believe City Lights is the company that acquired Spheres and paid somewhere over $1 million to grab this. It is directed by Eliza McNitt, I believe, and there's 3 different chapters in this that are narrated by 3 different people. I know Millie Bobby Brown did, I believe, Chorus of the Cosmos, and then Jessica Chastain did Songs of Space-Time. And the third one, I completely forget the third one. But I know there was a third one as well. But why don't we go ahead and talk about this a little bit? Gary, I know you were really interested in this. You wanted to check it out. You were pretty fascinated by space and all of that, and of course fascinated by VR as well. So this was right up your alley.
Yeah. I remember seeing this on one of the big websites, Upload or Road to VR, that when they were talking about this a while ago. So I didn't know it was actually coming out until it sort of hit, and I was really eager to try it out. I was actually, I was impressed with it. I thought it was good. And I went through all 3 of the chapters, and I think each one sort of stands up on its own. I think every one of those is worth watching. Each one lasts probably 10, just over 10 minutes each. I was the only disappointment, and probably disappointment's the wrong word, because I was still impressed with it overall. I just felt like it didn't really go deep enough into any one subject matter. It was sort of like I felt like it was a little bit of a shallow overview, as an excuse to give these quite impressive visuals with a backdrop of a narrative being played over it as well. And it's sort of very artistic. It's more of an artistic kind of thing rather than informative, I'd say. It's sort of focusing on the artsy side of things, and the narrative is very sort of poetic and majestic. It's trying to portray this kind of majestic scene that you're seeing in front of you, which I think works, and I think it's great demo material, and it will bring people into VR. I was only a little bit disappointed because I'd like to see it go a little bit deeper in the subject matter of each one of these. The final one, which was called Pale Blue Dot, because I think most people will know that, that's like a quote from Carl Sagan that he did. They turned the Voyager probe back when it was about to leave the solar system, pointed it back to Earth, and took a photo of Earth, which was against a backdrop of the void of space and a tiny couple of pixels, which were blue, which represented Earth. And it sort of signified how insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things. And Carl Sagan was talking about how this was every memory, every person that's ever lived, every event that's ever going to be remembered in history happened on those tiny 2 pixels. And the thing about that, really, the final chapter of this experience didn't touch on that at all. The pale blue dot didn't really feature it in that capacity. It was focused on something else. It was focused on Earth, but it didn't really touch on the parts of that quote that makes it impressive to me. So I was a little bit disappointed with that as well. But overall, I mean, it's a great experience. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I just wished it went a little bit deeper.
Okay, Chris, why don't I send it over to you? Chris, what do you think? Well, tell us what you think about the experience, and then what's your thoughts on like paying $10 for this?
Yeah, so here's the really funny thing about this. You guys are going to get a kick out of this. Is I tried this probably 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, at a VR exhibit in Montreal. So I went in for a field trip for one of my classes, and there was just this big black room with these really cool circular lights above each rift, and there was like 30 rifts set up in this giant like warehouse room. And there's like sectioned off like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. The way they were described to us was just there's one about the planets, there's one about the black hole, there's one about the Big Bang. So, and then you could just try them all out, which was really cool, but also is that kind of leads to that. I don't think I'd pay $10. I'd pay $5 for this, probably something like that. But I think, Gary, you described it really amazing. It's funny that it came out like a few weeks later. I thought it was free and it was out or something, like when I tried it, and I didn't know it wasn't out yet. So that's the funny thing there. But the production value is super high. Like right when I saw Oculus Studios on it, I was like, okay, this is going to be better than anything else in this VR exhibit. And it definitely was. Like, just the fact that Oculus had some money behind it, like, or Oculus had their brand on it, made me know it was going to be good. So, I mean, you can go into this knowing it's going to be really high production value in that way. But I agree with you, Gary. It could have went a little deeper on some of these things. But what a really good use of VR and of sound. And I think the sound design was probably the coolest thing for me. So definitely worth checking out if you're into space at all. But I don't know if it's really worth $10. If it went on sale for anything less than 10, I might even say it's more worth it. But
all right, Steve.
I'm gonna say, to me, it's worth it. Like I thought this was really impressive. Now, I've been using it sort of as I mentioned earlier with the two Samsung Odyssey headsets and to a degree the Rift. I've been using it as one of my A/B type material that I'm going back and forth on. So I think this thing is very visually impressive. Unfortunately, it does deal in space, so there's a lot of God ray inducing contrast that they just. Most games, I think, and most developers can design around that. I think spheres here are kind of stuck given the content material. But other than, just inherent God rays of white on black, I think this is visually stunning. It looks really good. It's informative. I agree with Gary that it may be have a little bit of an artistic lean rather than a pure David Attenborough informative something on the BBC type stuff. So I think that in either way, I think this is I think it's impressive. To me, I think it's worth the $10. I think stuff like this is super cool. I like learning stuff, regardless of how much learning there is in here. I don't know a lot about it, even though I consider myself a person of science. There's elements of space and physics and the astroplane that I don't know about. So I think I really dig this, and I haven't completed it. So the one question I don't have, and maybe Gary is how long the content is. And I need to figure out, like, there wasn't a way, unlike another experience we're going to talk about later, where you could actually go to very specific chapters within each of the 3 sub-elements. I didn't find a good way to resume where I was left off, so I don't know how long it is. But from what I've seen of it, I think it's super cool, and I really like it.
Yeah, just to answer that question, I think because I played through it in one sitting anyway, and as I say, each one is probably just over 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. I think total you're looking at around 35 to 40 minutes for this. And I don't know, actually, because I didn't go back in afterwards to see if there's any way to sort of skip scenes within each chapter or anything like that. There possibly is. But yeah, so I didn't mention price, actually. So just one final comment from me is, I'd say the price is probably a little bit too high. Really, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's sort of ridiculous to charge what they're charging. It's sort of borderline, I'd say. I'd like to see it a little bit cheaper.
Well, here's a question I have for you, Gary, or Steve. If this was the first thing you've done in VR, you went to like an art exhibit and this was there, would you be impressed? Would you take that away, like wanting to do more VR, you think?
Well, for me, like possibly. Now, I'm trying to think of what I would be thinking if I was doing this experience somewhere in a public setting. And I think that would detract, knowing that I'm standing somewhere in an exhibit hall and there are people around me, like it would be inherently distracting from really getting immersed into it. Like, you have to let yourself go, and you can't really do that in the public. I'll go back to the very first time I tried VR, which was in the public, which was PlayStation VR, the shark underwater thing. I let myself go in that moment just because I was doing VR for the first time. I'd never done a DK1, never done Gear VR or anything. So I was just blown away by the technology. Assuming someone doesn't have that same response, like I wouldn't like it as much in a public setting just because you're in a public setting. I think being, comfy in your own confines, goes a long way for kind of relaxing and getting into the mood for this.
Yeah. Is there, is there the part where you have to say stuff or use your voice? Gary, do you know if that's still in it?
Oh, no. Was it?
There.
I didn't hear.
Yeah, you know what? Because I actually put my wife into this, and I wanted her to do the first one, which was Chorus of the Cosmos, which is the one that I did. I hadn't tried any of the other ones, and I wanted her to, but she accidentally went into the second one. But she was fiddling with the headset, trying to get it like for the first couple minutes of that episode, the second one, she's like fiddling with the headset, fiddling with the headphones, and so she didn't even, and then the part where you talk into the microphone, it actually uses your microphone, and that was probably the coolest part of that experience.
What
right,
part's
Chris?
that? How did I miss that? What part is that?
Jessica Chastain, towards the end, she's like, say your name, or she says speak your name to the cosmos. Like, she basically tells you to, and I was like, wait, is she just saying that to say it, or am I real? And then I was like, hello, and then I started hearing it, and it's reverberated throughout the universe. Like, they do a really good job with. God. And
did I even?
That was the best part. Spoilers.
Yeah,
this has really good production value. Like, the visuals are really well done. Everything. Like, you may not like it for what it is, but the execution is on point. Like, regardless if you like it or not, the execution is well done, and you could tell that they had that big budget because they used it to create a polished, well executed experience. And again, it's just a matter of whether or not you'll like it or think it's worth the $10.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when that part happened, everyone in the public setting was really awkward about it because no one wanted to just scream their name out in the middle of a warehouse. So people would just be like, or something, just to make it reverberate or hum. I don't know. It's funny. If you're not in VR in that room, you just hear people whispering or humming or coughing. It's funny.
Yeah, so I tried the first two. So I ended up, I tried the Chorus of the Cosmos, and then after my wife did it, I was like, well, I better jump in it now and try that out. And I haven't tried the third one yet, but I like them. One of the things I like most about it actually is that there is that there's a little bit of interactivity that's added into it, because a lot of these things, you're just standing there, and you're just watching it. Maybe you'll turn around and look behind you or look up or look down, but you're not really interacting with it. But in the first one, I don't want to spoil anything too much, but the first one with Millie Bobby Brown, you can tell that the experience is waiting for you to do some things before it goes to, before it initiates the next part of it. And so it's waiting for you to kind of interact with these planets. You kind of push and pull them and do some different things with it. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, you can see glowing balls or something that are representing your hands. And so you can kind of move around. I love to have some kind of hand presence in a VR experience, because for me it brings me into the world more than just being this. I want to be in the world a little bit more. And then in the second one too, you're reaching up to the heavens at certain points. So I thought all of that was pretty cool. And then also from the visual standpoint, I just checked right now to see how many gigs this was. It's a little under 4 gigs. I was kind of surprised it was that small, because I felt like the clarity of everything was quite high resolution. We've seen a lot of space stuff in VR so far. Gary, I know you've tried a lot of space things, right? Do you think I know you're not super, super impressed with what they did here, but just purely from a visuals of the planets and stuff, do you think this is maybe the best one, or do you think there's another space thing that did the planets better?
No, not really, honestly. I think they did a really good job of this. And actually, I was just thinking when Steve was speaking earlier about the God rays in this, they, for some reason, and the mirror effect on headset, it didn't seem to impact me at all so much on this as I expected it. And they might have used some clever little techniques to do that, where you're distracted by certain other things that you're doing, where it doesn't impact you quite so much. But yeah, I think the clarity of everything is very, very good in this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the God rays, I mean, you definitely notice it with the opening sequence, you know, where it's doing spheres and it has the circles and it says Oculus Studios and all that. But once that goes away, I hardly notice any God rays at all. And I only noticed the Mira one time when like it just got completely dark and Jessica Chastain was like, listen to the, you know, and it was just complete darkness. And then I saw the Mura and I was like, ah, man, we got to get rid of this Mura at some point. But yeah, no, it's a pretty cool experience to be sure. Okay, now why don't we go ahead and bounce over to probably really the biggest game that we got to try this week, and that is the Megalith Open-Beta. And this is available for PlayStation VR. Now, this is coming to us from Disruptive Games. It's not actually going to release until, I believe, January 8th, 2019. So this is an early January release, but they do have this open beta. You can get in, you can try it out. And I'll start off real quick and just say that I'm not into MOBAs. I'm not into multiplayer. This is not my type of thing at all, but I felt like I had to jump in here and kind of try it out just to do my due diligence. And I came away really, really impressed with the whole experience. It was kind of a 2-on-2 deal, and it was me and another guy, and we're going up against two other people, and you have this backdrop where the action takes place, and you can choose a number of different characters. I believe there's about 5 different characters to choose from. In the open beta, 2 of them are unlocked, and I think it's kind of random which 2 are unlocked. Now, if you go ahead and pre-order this in advance, Megalith, then all 5 of the avatars are unlocked and you can choose any which one. But the different avatars, you're going to use move controllers with this for actual hand presence if you probably want to do it the right way. I guess you could probably use a DualShock 4 as well. But with the move controllers, there's your arms are different based on which kind of creature you end up choosing. The creatures are a little bit different. Some are more designed for range combat. Some of them are more melee style. And man, it was just a really good time. I thought the graphics were good. I kind of like the way the graphics looks. Kind of reminded me of Altered Beast for some reason on the old Sega Genesis. Like, I don't know, it had kind of this Greek kind of look to it, the environment, but then also like maybe on an alien planet at the same time. A lot of different power-ups. Maybe the only real complaint I have with this is that the controls are a challenge. You're gonna take some time to learn these controls. They're putting controls on every little button. Every different button does something. Lots of controls to work with. It took me a while to kind of wrap my head around the controls, but once you kind of get a feel for the controls, there's a lot you can do. And I was in these battles with, I ended up playing with a couple of different people, super friendly, super cooperative. And I think that's what really makes an experience like this. And I've always get nervous in these multiplayer games. But I think you're just with one other person. And I think there's something different about that. If you're just with one other person, especially if they're a friendly, approachable type of person, you can just have a good time together. And even if you die and you're losing, not that big of a deal. And so I had a great time with this. Pretty blown away by it, actually. This was not on my radar as something that I would ever be interested in. But why don't I go ahead and send it over to Steve? Steve, did you get a chance to try this at all? No.
Nope, I have been super busy, so I finally didn't try a game, everyone.
Yeah, you're always the one that tries everything. Okay, let's go over to Gary. Gary, I think you got a chance to try this, right?
Yeah, I did. And we speak all the time about, on this show, how I'm not. I mentioned I'm not really a multiplayer guy. Although I was thinking about this, it's not really true all the time, because back in the day I used to play Quake. We used to have LAN parties and we used to play Quake or Unreal Tournament and that kind of stuff. And I play games online. I play Halo 3. I got into that quite a lot with multiplayer as well. But it's just recently I'm not really that kind of a person. However, the one thing that attracted me to this game is that people were comparing it to like a VR version of Overwatch, like a hero shooter, multiplayer shooter. And that is actually one game that I did get into briefly, you know, only whenever they have the free weekends and that kind of stuff. I try it, and I actually got on quite well with that. I quite enjoyed it. So I thought I'll jump into this one and give it a try as well. And similar to you, Anthony, actually, I didn't know how much time I'd spend in there, but the time I spent I played around about 5 matches actually in total with this. And the first 3 went very, very quickly because I was just too much of a hindrance to the other person, although he was very friendly as well in the beta. He was sort of guiding me through and helping me out with certain things. But yeah, they went pretty quick. After that, the next 2 matches went very slowly, and there's something I want to bring up with this game, and it might be balancing, it might just be it's too early that people have not got the tactics right or something like that, where there's a lot of you feel like you're going to win, and then all of a sudden they bring it back, and then you bring it back again, and there's like this back and forth between this where matches can go on for a long time. I was playing one for well over 40 minutes, whereas the first few when we're finished within 5 to 10 minutes. And I think if you get matched with people that sort of a similar level of experience with it, it can just go backwards and forwards for a long time. So I'm not too sure if there's an issue with balancing, or maybe not. Maybe that's perfectly balanced. I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I played it originally on DualShock, and that was okay. I quite enjoyed it, but then I went over to Move controllers based on advice of people that I was playing with, and I've got to say I'm not too sure, because I've mentioned before I'm not really a fan of the Move controllers anyway, so I sort of always gravitate towards DualShock if I'm given that opportunity. But I think there's not a lot in it with this game. I think whichever control method you get used to, that is the one you could possibly stick with. I'd say that for me, I'm gravitating slightly more towards the Move controllers in this particular game. I think it was really, really good. The one issue I have with a lot of PSVR games where I'm playing with Move controllers is you have this issue where, especially in this game where it can get a little bit frantic, you lose focus on where the front is. So if you're standing up, you can sometimes be facing sideways and lose tracking in this kind of stuff. I think I'm sort of going over to the thought process of maybe it's better to play this game sitting, even with Move controllers, just so you know where the front always is. And I've yet to try that, but that was one of the small issues I had with it. But really, really enjoyable. You get to know all the little mechanics that are taking place in this. There's various sort of power-ups that you get with each character that you play as. And there's a lot to explore, actually. It was a little bit deeper than I expected it to be, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had one match where it was 45 minutes, and it was like, God, when is this thing going to end? It's like if I did have maybe one complaint, I kind of would like it to be around 25-ish minutes rather than 45 minutes, because it's like if you're going to play for 45 minutes, you're setting, you need a chunk of time for that you need to set aside for it. And you don't want to quit out of a match early and screw over the guy that, you're playing with. But it definitely was one of these back and forth things. There's some interesting things that are going on in this game, because you kind of start off in your own area. The other 2 guys are in their own area. So it's kind of like you have your own little bases, almost like brass tactics. But then near where your home base is, there's a creature that the other team, they can go over to where this creature is. And if they like, they can unlock this creature that helps them and does like a big monster that comes into the game and does a lot of damage. You also have these little minions that are running around. You're like a giant, the reason they call it Megalith is you're like this giant King Kong type creature. So you have these little guys that are running around, your minions. And then if you can get over to their side and unlock your creature, it's kind of this really cool thing where you unlock the special creature. And so it's a very back and forth kind of game. You can get kind of drained where you're almost to the point of death, and then you can make a comeback. And so we had this epic 45-minute battle that was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, the main thing I want to say with Megalith is, even if you're not a MOBA, not a multiplayer type guy, if you have a PSVR, you probably want to jump in here and check it out. I do think it's worth a look, if nothing else. All right.
Just very quickly, Anthony, sorry, just before we move on, the one thing I wanted to mention, because this is something I wanted to bring up just about a problem with the game, only in this beta, it's still early days, and there was an issue. Part of the reason those first few games went very quickly for me as well, not only was I being a hindrance, but also there was a bug where it's supposed to be 2-on-2, but there's a bug in this game, and it happened numerous times where one team gets 3 people on their team. So obviously that completely ruins it. So I did have that happen a couple of times as well. So that's just worth mentioning, but I'm sure they'll sort all these small problems out anyway.
Yeah, that's why they do these betas, to try to figure that kind of stuff out. So yeah, hopefully they'll have that dialed in. Disruptive is a pretty solid developer. Okay.
Anybody know how much is this going to go for when it releases in January?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe they haven't announced. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's get into another experience that we all, a lot of us have tried. I don't know if all of us tried this, but it's called Crow the Legend. And so this is by Baobab Studios. Not sure exactly how to pronounce that. It is free, but it is exclusive on the Oculus Store for at least a limited time. And there's a lot of star power in this. There's some recognizable names that are doing voices and singing. For example, John Legend. I don't know if it has anything to do with it. Well, no. Crow the Legend actually is based on a Native American folk tale. And John Legend is the voice of the crow in this game, and he does some singing, and there's a lot of regular dialogue as well. Oprah Winfrey is in this, and a number of other people. And why don't I send it up? Chris, did you get a chance to try Crow the Legend? Okay, why don't I send it over to you first and go ahead and give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't finished it yet. I hopped on right before the show started and just tried a little bit of it on the go. So I'm sure it'd be much better on the Rift, because on the go it's a little bit blurry and but production value on this is also through the roof, just like with Spheres. But this is a really good animated thing. Reminds me of Pixar, the way they're doing this. Kind of reminded me of Ice Age when it gets to a snow part. So I think this is a must download for anybody who just wants to see what the next or what immersive cinema is going to be like in the future. This is a very, very well produced thing, much better than the previous stuff from this studio. I think their alien abduction series was kind of interesting, but
Invasion.
Invasion. Yeah, this brings it to a whole nother level in my opinion. I think I haven't done much of it, but also I don't want to spoil it even if I had. So I think, people should just try it out for themselves. By the way, one thing is Megalith is $30. You can pre-order right now.
Okay. Steve, did you get a chance to try Crow the Legend?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I did not initially know that it was on the go, so I want to download it for the go, because that almost seems like it would be a easier way to show other people, of course. But I went through it this morning, honestly, and the price is right. It's free, so everyone listening to this should go try it out. Yes, it's exclusive to Oculus, but I played it with the Odyssey just fine, so Revive will take care of it. So it pretty much doesn't matter what headset you have. You do need motion controllers. At first, I thought Revive was blocking me, because when you boot it up without motion controllers turned on, I thought it was a completely passive experience. It tells you, you got to have touch controllers. And luckily I tried it with the WMR controllers, and Revive translated it to touch just fine. So it works so again, where I'm going is it doesn't matter what headset you have. You can check this out. And it's free, so you're not really helping Oculus in any way by doing that, if that's your hang up. I thought it was super cool. I also liked Invasion. As in the early VR days, it was a nice little animated thing to check out. My kids, my daughter particularly, absolutely loved Invasion. She has not seen The Crow yet, and I know she's going to really dig it. It is a like you guys said, a sort of a Pixar, DreamWorks level type. it's not as good as Pixar. I mean, let's be real. Pixar is on another level. But I'd certainly say DreamWorks, like it's DreamWorks quality stuff here. The voice acting's good. It's done by real people with a budget, with where they, intently try to do real well with the voice acting. Ty Sheridan is one of the actors, and I believe he is the turtle. There's a turtle in here, and he was he was Percival in Ready Player One, I believe, right? That's the same guy. So it's got a seemingly all-star cast to a degree, and I really can't say much good or much else about it because it's free, it's good, and you should go download it. And it's 1, 2, 3 done. Go do it.
Gary, what about your thoughts?
Yeah, it's free. Yeah, I don't know. It was pretty good. I played this on the Go, and similar to Chris, it's a little bit blurry on the Go for some reason, and it also seems to lack the interactive elements, if they're the small interactive elements that seem to be on the Rift version. I actually wanted to go into the Rift version last night. I just didn't get a chance, unfortunately. I wanted to compare the two. Yeah, it's good. It didn't blow me away or anything. I think, they're doing everything right. The production value is really good. The animation's really good. They've got great voice acting in there. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It just didn't really buzz me, if I'm being honest. But yeah, nothing bad to say.
Interesting, because I think you guys should try it on the Rift. Those of you that didn't try it on the Rift, just because, I don't know, I thought this was pretty damn good. Like Steve is saying, it's kind of Pixar Junior, DreamWorks Junior. You can kind of see you can see that that's what they're going for with it, and it doesn't quite reach that level. There's not enough polygons on like the characters themselves. But one of the things I really liked about this, it's a 360 experience, but the way they do the voices and the way that the sound works, sometimes you get into these different things and like maybe the sound, something's like wrong with the sound, or there's little glitches here and little glitches there, or the sound isn't coming from the right direction, or, different things like this. And for me, when I did this, like the sound worked really good. There's certain parts where the crow, which is John Legend, is like flying over behind you and then singing for a little bit behind you. And the sound comes from behind you, and you turn to look to where the sound is. And there's some different little things that happen. I don't want to spoil this, but there's some stuff that gets really close to your head at certain times. And then like what Steve was talking about, this is similar to Spheres, where they're giving you some hand presence. So you actually have a bit of hand presence in this. And I don't want to spoil this part too much, but like you're kind of like, you have like your hands turn into like branches of a tree, and you're kind of waving them around at different points, and it kind of lights things up. And sometimes you're just waving your hands in the air, and there's like a smoke that's following you. And I thought it was pretty damn good. Like, I really think you guys might want to try this on the Rift because...
Yeah, there's something just to clarify, and Fluke Rogers just mentioned in chat. So the Go version is a video version, whereas the Rift version is real time, and that explains a lot as to why it would be a much better experience on the Rift than it is on the Go.
Yes, but like I think we were talking before we recorded, there is a even though on PC on the Rift, I guess I was seeing, even though I didn't try my Rift, maybe it was a Revive issue. I was seeing what looked like sort of a reprojected. I think when I don't know. First of all, I don't know if this is available flat. And that might answer this, but it looked in certain moments, the animation was at a reduced frame rate. It wasn't 90, and it wasn't due to the load on my PC. I have FPS VR running, and I looked down and on this rendering, on this application, it was using like 30% of my GPU. So I wasn't going into reprojection or anything from a load standpoint, but there were times where the animations were done at a lower frame rate and almost looked reprojected. And I don't know, maybe that is because it is maybe it's available flat, or they're going to make it available flat. So when bringing that up, Gary, I think that might be in part of what you were seeing on the Go version, and just understanding that the PC version is going to carry that as well to a degree.
Well, yeah, I just, bottom line is I was quite impressed with this. This is another thing I want to put my wife into. I got her to try spheres. Now I want her to try Crow. And then there's another experience that we got this week. We don't have it listed on here, but did anybody try Age of Sail? Because I was really quite impressed with that. That was the Google Spotlight Stories. And it's kind of like an interactive painting almost that you're in, and you're on the ocean, and there's like this old sailor guy and this young lady that fell overboard, and kind of they have a little mini adventure for a brief period. Did anybody get a chance to try that?
I didn't see it. Is it is it a rendering? Is it video, like real video? What is
it's in engine, I believe. It's like in a game engine, but it looks like a painting. It looks like it's just the artistic style. It kind of makes it look like it's a painting that's come to life, but it's happening around you. And I feel like it's more than just like a 360 video.
It looks a little bit, I've not played it, but from what I've seen about it, it looks a little bit like a Quill kind of experience.
Like Dear Angelica or something like that, kind of like that.
It looks super good.
But yeah, no, very high quality. And it's just kind of interesting that all of these hit this week. Just a lot of interesting experiences. The first one I tried was Age of Sail. Then I tried Crow. Then I tried Spheres. And it's like, wow, 3 really good VR. Like all of these, I would probably rank in maybe my top 20 best VR experiences, with other stuff like Blade Runner 2049, Memory Lab, Senza Peso, Robot Repair in the Lab, Henry Lost, all of the great experiences that we've had. I kind of throw all of these into that mix a little bit. And Absolutely. So we're quite blessed to have all this good stuff.
It actually seems like it's been a while. Like we had a lot of those experiences front loaded with the release of VR. They were clearly in the works, and I always thought that they were great because I like being in VR, and I like the visual audio treat that VR is, and it doesn't have to be playing a game for me. Like I think that's my primary focus is the visual road it takes me down. And it seems like this year a lot of that stuff is dried up, so it's nice to see that stuff kind of trickle back in late year. And I guess each of these studios are trying to get the release out before end of year, and so it hits this year's books and all that. But I always welcome this stuff. I really I think it's great. The price is good. I don't know how any of these people are making money. That runs at Spheres. Like I forgot what we talked about a couple months ago, Chris. Maybe it was the thing that your company or that company you were interning with worked on. But Spheres is going to have to sell how much to break even? Like I don't see that happening. So we're looking at an element of this stuff being funded by the governments and other sort of egalitarian motives to get this content out. And I'm glad it exists because I think I think it's good to be there. It's good to choose the demo people because it's universal. It doesn't matter if it's a 6-year-old or an 86-year-old grandma. Like they can equally enjoy this types of content, and it helps for the non-gamers, for the people. Grandma's not going to play Onward, but she can check out The Crow, and I think it helps push the medium forward.
Yeah, there's so many coming out, and like I've went on field trips in the same class to studios working on kind of immersive stuff. I think there's NDAs, so I can't talk about them, but there's like a crap ton of funding and like a crap ton of these type of things like being worked on, it seems like. So it's like the renaissance for VR experiences, I guess.
It sounds like in the background, Chris, you're setting up the beer pong there at your college.
Someone is.
All right. Well, was there anything? Oh, you know what? Real quick before we bounce out of here, Gary, I know you got a chance to try the wrench demo, which is it's an interesting demo and an interesting concept. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just really like the concept of this, honestly. So for anybody that doesn't know, basically Wrench, the demo and the full game, it allows you to sort of assemble a car right down to the individual nuts and bolts. It's just an interesting idea that the developer of this has, and I was intrigued to go into it and really give it a try. So honestly, I've not got the patience to do this kind of thing all the way through. I've not got enough of an interest in cars or anything like that. But the idea behind it really interests me. And I went through, I think they've done a great job on the demo. My dad was a mechanic, and I shown him this on just like a YouTube video of somebody playing this game. I said, this is what somebody is doing in VR now, and he seemed pretty interested in it. I have a reservation of actually putting him in this, only because there's still, at this point, there's still a problem in terms of something I was talking about a few weeks ago on another game or demo that we had, where there's a problem with dexterity of the controls that are in VR. And I think this game suffers a little bit of it. It's not like it's going to ruin the experience for anybody that's into VR or anything like that. But the controls, they can be finicky only in the sense that you need to grab certain points, manipulate certain things in a way that is not necessarily comfortable for somebody that doesn't come from a VR background or isn't used to touch or Vive ones or anything like that. So I hesitate to put my dad in it, even though I think this could actually sort of bring him over to the side that, this is a great educational tool. VR is a great educational tool. I just look forward to the day where we have things like gloves, haptic gloves that can do this in a slightly better way. Taking that aside, I think the experience itself for anybody that is into VR, I think it's great. You can it's ridiculous the amount of effort that must have gone into this, where they've digitized all of these individual parts on a car, and in the demo you can sort of put together a very limited section, but it's interesting nevertheless to try. Even as somebody that's not into cars, I think it's great, and it can be applied to so many other things in the world. In terms of education, you could do a cut down version for children in schools that are just interested in the way things work. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mechanical thing of this complexity. It can be something much more simple that children can just get to grips with and understand how things work on a basic level. I think there's so much value to this kind of experience.
Yeah, one of the things I think about, like, I'll tell my kids whenever they're like, I don't understand this or I don't understand that, I tell them, just go to YouTube. There's a video on it. There's a video on YouTube on how to do that, on how to do this, on how to do that. But think like 10 years from now, there's not only going to be a YouTube video on it, there's going to be a VR experience that like literally physically walks you through the entire procedure. It's going to be crazy. I don't know what it's going to do to the repair industry, though. Like, everybody's going to be repairing their own refrigerators and repairing their ovens and dishwashers and all of that, because we're going to have the ability to like actually physically do it ourselves and learn how to do it.
Well, that exists now. Like, I've saved hundreds of dollars of being able to buy a $10 part for my refrigerator because somebody posted that video to YouTube and said, no, don't call a repairman, buy this $10 part and plug it in. And that's all it did. Like, so that exists now. I think as cool as this is, and I haven't checked it out, so I take what I'm saying with a grain of salt to that extent. There's still the element of technique, right? Like, knowing what to do, knowing X widget plugs into Y socket, is great from a knowledge standpoint. But there's the element, like building an engine, you have gaskets. Like, how do you know you have the gaskets seated well enough? There will still be a technique element that I don't know will be conveyed in an experience like that an experienced mechanic or whatever will know and understand. And of course, there's the weight. You can build an engine in this VR app all day, and that's cool. But and you pick it up and set it in the car. Like, in the real world, like, you need a cherry picker and you need a lift, and that's a little more of an involved, tedious process to actually drop an engine into a vehicle. So it's just a few things.
Yeah, I get that, Steve. Yeah, and there's obviously like on the job training where you get a bit more of experience where you're actually manipulating these things in real life. I still think, even taking that into account, I still think that there's so much potential for this kind of thing, just to give you a grounding in where to even begin, because I wouldn't have any kind of clue of where to begin to assemble an engine, and yet you can sort of get to grips with it in some kind of abstract way in this experience. I still think it's really worth trying.
Yeah, I wasn't like going negative on it in any way. Like, I think this stuff is super cool and I think it has its place, but I was just kind of saying more from a knowledge and awareness perspective rather than direct hands-on experience.
Yeah.
Steve always coming in, ruin it with the facts. But you know what? AR might actually eventually be better for that. Like, I can imagine AR, you open up the hood of your car and like the AR goggles are like oh, you have this year Honda Accord, blah 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 blah. Here's your oil filter. Here's this. Here's that. Kind of Terminator style.
That would be awesome, and that is going to happen, I think.
Can't
Absolutely.
wait for that.
All righty. Well, that's pretty much going to go ahead and do it for episode 104 of our show. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us in chat. Thanks so much for the super chats. I don't have the screen on me here. Who were the donators for super chat? Steve, might as well run that down real quick.
Once again, thanks to Cods Wallop, Micah Dunning, and Jason Walker. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks so much for contributing with Super Chat. We appreciate that. And thanks for just joining us in chat. And for everybody that is watching after the fact, you can go ahead and leave a comment. We usually will bounce in here, kind of check out the comments and reply to different comments and that sort of thing as well, or maybe even feature your comment on a future episode. So that's going to go ahead and do it. And we will see everybody next time. Have a wonderful weekend. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.